Everyone loves to listen to a good book, and there are so many wonderful ones to choose, so we decided to bring you this podcast of Stories Come to Life. Each episode features a story from either classic or modern literature, especially chosen to be interesting and exciting to hear. So sit back, relax, and listen to this story come to life. Welcome to Stories Come to Life. I am your host, Kathryn Lopez Luker. It's apple picking time up at the hill farms, and the whole group of cousins is busy harvesting the ripe beauties and listening to the story girl weave tales. Things take a deeply serious turn, though, when one of their number walks precariously close to the valley of the shadow of death. Now sit back, relax, and listen to this story come to life. The Story Girl by L.M. Montgomery. Chapter 28. The Tale of the Rainbow Bridge. Felix, so far as my remembrance goes, never attained to success in the ordeal of bitter apples. He gave up trying after a while, and he also gave up praying about it, saying in bitterness of spirit that there was no use in praying when other fellows prayed against you out of spite. He and Peter remained on bad terms for some time, however. We were all of us too tired those nights to do any special praying. Sometimes I fear our regular prayers were slurred over or mumbled in anything but reverent haste. October was a busy month on the hill farms. The apples had to be picked, and this work fell mainly to us children. We stayed home from school to do it. It was pleasant work, and there was a great deal of fun in it. But it was hard, too, and our arms and backs ached roundly at night. In the mornings it was very delightful. In the afternoons tolerable. But in the evenings we lagged, and the laughter and zest of fresher hours were lacking. Some of the apples had to be picked very carefully, but with others it did not matter. We boys would climb the trees and shake the apples down until the girls shrieked for mercy. The days were crisp and mellow, with warm sunshine and a tang of frost in the air, mingled with the woodsy odors of the withering grasses. The hens and turkeys prowled about, pecking at windfalls, and Pat made mad rushes at them amid the fallen leaves. The world beyond the orchard was in a royal magnificence of coloring, under the vivid blue autumn sky. The big willow by the gate was a splendid golden dome, and the maples that were scattered through the spruce grove waved blood-red banners over the somber cone-bearers. The story girl generally had her head garlanded with their leaves. They became her vastly. Neither Felicity nor Cecily could have worn them. Those two girls were of a domestic type that assorted ill with the wildfire in nature's veins. But when the story girl wreathed her nut-brown tresses with crimson leaves, it seemed, as Peter said, that they grew on her, as if the gold and flame of her spirit had broken out in a coronal. As much a part of her as the pale halo seems a part of the Madonna it encircles. What tales she told us on those faraway autumn days, peopling the russet arcades with folk of an elder world. Many a princess rode by us on her palfrey. Many a swaggering gallant ruffled up bravely in velvet and plume adown Uncle Stephen's walk. Many a stately lady, silken-clad, walked in that opulent orchard. When we had filled our baskets, they had to be carried to the granary loft, and the contents stored in bins or spread on the floor to ripen further. We ate a good many, of course, feeling that the laborer was worthy of his hire. The apples from our own birthday trees were stored in separate barrels, inscribed with our names. We might dispose of them as we willed. Felicity sold hers to Uncle Alex's hired man, and was badly cheated to boot, for he levanted shortly afterwards, taking the apples with him, having paid her only half her rightful due. Felicity has not gotten over that to this day. Cecily, dear heart, sent most of hers to the hospital in town, and no doubt gathered in therefrom dividends of gratitude and satisfaction of soul, such as can never be purchased by any mere process of bargain and sale. The rest of us ate our apples, or carried them to school, where we bartered them for such treasures as our schoolmates possessed, and we coveted. There was a dusky little pear-shaped apple from one of Uncle Stevens's trees, which was our favorite, and next to it a delicious, juicy yellow apple from Aunt Louisa's tree. We were also fond of the big sweet apples. We used to throw them up in the air and let them fall on the ground until they were bruised and battered to the bursting point. Then we sucked on the juice. Sweeter was it than the nectar drunk by blissful gods on the Thessalian hill. Sometimes we worked until the cold yellow sunsets faded out over the darkening distances, and the hunter's moon looked down on us through the sparkling air. The constellations of autumn scintillated above us. Peter and the Story Girl knew all about them, and imparted their knowledge to us generously. I recall Peter standing on the pulpit stone one night ere moonrise, and pointing them out to us, occasionally having a difference of opinion with the Story Girl over the name of some particular star. Job's coffin and the Northern Cross were to the west of us. South of us flamed Fomalhaut. The great square of Pegasus was over our heads. Cassiopeia sat enthroned in her beautiful chair in the northeast. And north of us, the Dippers swung untiringly around the pole star. Cecily and Felix were the only ones who could distinguish the double star in the handle of the Big Dipper, and greatly did they plume themselves thereon. The Story Girl told us the myths and legends woven around these immemorial clusters, her very voice taking on a clear, remote, starry sound as she talked of them. When she ceased, we came back to earth, feeling as if we had been millions of miles away in the blue ether, and that all our old familiar surroundings were momentarily forgotten and strange. That night, when he pointed out the stars to us from the pulpit stone, was the last time for several weeks that Peter shared our toil and pastime. The next day he complained of headache and sore throat, and seemed to prefer lying on Aunt Olivia's kitchen sofa to doing any work. As it was not in Peter to be a malingerer, he was left in peace, while we picked apples. Felix alone, most unjustly and spitefully, declared that Peter was simply shirking. "He is just lazy, that's what's the matter with him," he said. "Why don't you talk sense if you must talk?" said Felicity. "There's no sense in calling Peter lazy. You might as well say I had black hair. Of course, Peter being a Craig has his faults, but he's a smart boy. His father was lazy, but his mother hasn't a lazy bone in her body, and Peter takes after her." "Uncle Roger says Peter's father wasn't exactly lazy," said the Story Girl. "The trouble was, there were so many other things he liked better than work." "I wonder if he'll ever come back to his family," said Cecily. "Just think how dreadful it would be if our father had left us like that." "Our father is a king," said Felicity loftily, "and Peter's father was only a Craig. A member of our family couldn't behave like that." "They say there must be a black sheep in every family," said the Story Girl. "There isn't any in ours," said Cecily loyally. "Why do white sheep eat more than black?" asked Felix. "Is that a conundrum?" asked Cecily cautiously. "If it is, I won't try to guess the reason. I never can guess conundrums." "It isn't a conundrum," said Felix. "It's a fact. They do. And there's a good reason for it." We stopped picking apples, sat down on the grass, and tried to reason it out. With the exception of Dan, who declared that he knew there was a catch somewhere and he wasn't going to be caught, the rest of us could not see where any catch could exist, since Felix solemnly vowed Cross his heart, white sheep did eat more than black. We argued over it seriously, but finally had to give it up. Well, what is the reason? Asked Felicity. Because there's more of 'em, said Felix, grinning. I forget what we did to Felix. A shower came up in the evening, and we had to stop picking. After the shower, there was a magnificent double rainbow. We watched it from the granary window, and the story girl told us an old legend, culled from one of Aunt Olivia's many scrapbooks. Long, long ago in the Golden Age, when the gods used to visit the earth so often that it was nothing uncommon to see them, Odin made a pilgrimage over the world. Odin was the great god of the Northland, you know, and wherever he went among men, he taught them love and brotherhood and skillful arts, and great cities sprang up where he had trodden, and every land through which he passed was blessed, because one of the gods had come down to men. But many men and women followed Odin himself, giving up all their worldly possessions and ambitions, and to these he promised the gift of eternal life. All these people were good and noble and unselfish and kind, but the best and noblest of them all was a youth named Ving, and this youth was beloved by Odin above all others, for his beauty and strength and goodness. Always he walked on Odin's right hand, and always the first light of Odin's smile fell on him. Tall and straight was he as a young pine, and his long hair was the color of ripe wheat in the sun, and his blue eyes were like the Northland heavens on a starry night. In Odin's band there was a beautiful maiden named Ailin. She was as fair and delicate as a young birch tree in spring among the old dark pines and firs. And Ving loved her with all his heart. His soul thrilled with rapture at the thought that he and she, together, should drink from the fountain of immortality, as Odin had promised, and be one thereafter in eternal youth. At last they came to the very place where the rainbow touched the earth, and at the rainbow was a great bridge built of living colors, so dazzling and wonderful that beyond it the eye could see nothing, only far away a great blinding sparkling glory, where the fountain of life sprang up in a shower of diamond fire. But under the rainbow bridge rolled a terrible flood, deep and wide and violent, full of rocks and rapids and whirlpools. There was a warder of the bridge, a god, dark and stern and sorrowful, and to him Odin gave command that he should open the gate and allow his followers to cross the rainbow bridge, that they might drink of the fountain of life beyond. And the warder set open the gate. "Pass on and drink of the fountain," he said. "To all who taste of it shall immortality be given, but only that one who shall drink of it first shall be permitted to walk at Odin's right hand forever." Then the company passed through in great haste, all fired with a desire to be the first to drink of the fountain, and win so marvelous a boon. Last of all came Ving. He had lingered behind to pluck a thorn from the foot of a beggar child he had met on the highway, and he had not heard the warder's words. But when, eager, joyous, radiant, he set his foot on the rainbow, the stern, sorrowful warder took him by the arm and drew him back. "Ving, strong, noble, and valiant," he said, "Rainbow Bridge is not for thee." Very dark grew Ving's face. Hot rebellion rose in his heart and rushed over his pale lips. "Why dost thou keep back the draught of immortality from me?" he demanded passionately. The warder pointed to the dark flood that roiled under the bridge. "The path of the rainbow is not for thee," he said, "but yonder way is open. Ford that flood. On the furthest bank is the fountain of life." "Thou mockest me," muttered Ving sullenly. "No mortal could cross that flood. O master," he prayed, turning beseechingly to Odin, Thou didst promise to me eternal life as to the others. Wilt thou not keep that promise? Command the warder to let me pass. He must obey thee." But Odin stood silent, with his face turned from his beloved, and Ving's heart was filled with unspeakable bitterness and despair. "Thou mayest return to earth, if thou fearest to essay the flood," said the warder. "Nay," said Ving wildly, "earthly life without Elin is more dreadful than the death which awaits me in yon dark river." And he plunged fiercely in. He swam and struggled. He buffeted the turmoil. The waves went over his head again and again. The whirlpools caught him and flung him on the cruel rocks. The wild, cold spray beat on his eyes and blinded him, so that he could see nothing. And the roar of the river deafened him, so that he could hear nothing. But he felt keenly the wounds and bruises of the cruel rocks. Many a time he would have given up the struggle, had not the thought of sweet Elin's loving eyes brought him the strength and desire to struggle as long as it was possible. Long, long, long to him seemed that bitter and perilous passage, but at last he won through to the furthest side. Breathless and reeling, his vesture torn, his great wounds bleeding, he found himself on the shore where the stream of immortality sprang up. He staggered to its brink and drank of its clear stream. Then all pain and weariness fell away from him, and he rose up, a god, beautiful with immortality. And as he did, there came rushing over the rainbow bridge a great company, the band of fellow travelers. But all were too late to win the double boon. Ving had won to it through the danger and suffering of the dark river. The rainbow had faded out, and the darkness of the October dusk was falling. "I wonder," said Dan meditatively, as we went away from that redolent spot, "what it would be like to live forever in this world." "I expect we'd get tired of it after a while," said the Story Girl. "But," she added, "I think it would be a goodly while before I would." Chapter 29. The Shadow Feared of Man. We were all up early the next morning, dressing by candlelight. But early as it was, we found the Story Girl in the kitchen when we went down, sitting on Rachel Ward's blue chest and looking important. "What do you think?" she exclaimed. "Peter has the measles." He was dreadfully sick all night, and Uncle Roger had to go for the doctor. He was quite light-headed and didn't know anyone. Of course, he's far too sick to be taken home, so his mother has come up to wait on him, and I'm to live over here until he's better. This was mingled bitter and sweet. We were sorry to hear that Peter had the measles, but it would be jolly to have the Story Girl living with us all the time. What orgies of storytelling we should have! "I suppose we all have the measles now," grumbled Felicity. "And October's such an inconvenient time for measles. There's so much to do." "I don't believe any time is very convenient to have the measles," Cecily said. "Oh, perhaps we won't have them," said the Story Girl cheerfully. "Peter caught them at Markdale, the last time he was home, his mother says." "I don't want to catch the measles from Peter," said Felicity decidedly. "Fancy catching them from a hired boy." "Oh, Felicity, don't call Peter a hired boy when he's sick," sighed Cecily. During the next 2 days we were very busy. Too busy to tell tales or listen to them. Only in the frosty dusk did we have time to wander afar in realms of gold with the Story Girl. She had recently been digging into a couple of old volumes of classic myths and Northland folklore, which she had found in Aunt Olivia's attic. And for us, god and goddess, laughing nymph and mocking satyr, Norn and Valkyrie, elf and troll, and green folk generally, were real creatures once again, inhabiting the orchards and woods and meadows around us. until it seemed as if the golden age had returned to earth. Then, on the third day, the Story Girl came to us with a very white face. She had been over to Uncle Roger's yard to hear the latest bulletin from the sick room. Hitherto they had been of a non-committal nature, but now it was only too evident that she had bad news. "Peter is very, very sick," she said miserably. "He has caught cold some way, and the measles have struck in, and... The Story Girl wrung her brown hands together. "The doctor is afraid he won't get better." We all stood around, stricken, incredulous. "Do you mean," said Felix, finding voice at last, "that Peter is going to die?" The Story Girl nodded miserably. "They're afraid so." Cecily sat down by her half-filled basket and began to cry. Felicity said violently that she didn't believe it. "Can't pick another apple today, and I ain't going to try," said Dan. None of us could. We went to the grown-ups and told them so. And the grown-ups, with unaccustomed understanding and sympathy, told us that we need not. Then we roamed about in our wretchedness and tried to comfort one another. We avoided the orchard, for it was too full of happy memories to accord with our bitterness of soul. Instead, we resorted to the spruce wood, where the hush and the somber shadows and the soft, melancholy sighing of the wind in the branches over us did not jar harshly on our new sorrow. We could not really believe that Peter was going to die. To die? Old people died. Grown-up people died. Even children of whom we had heard died. But that one of us, of our merry little band, should die was unbelievable. We could not believe it, and yet that possibility struck us in the face like a blow. We sat on the mossy stones under the dark old evergreens and gave ourselves up to wretchedness. We all, even Dan, cried, except the Story Girl. "I don't see how you can be so unfeeling, Sarah Stanley," said Felicity reproachfully. "You've always been such friends with Peter, and made out you thought so much of him, and now you ain't shedding a tear for him." I looked at the Story Girl's dry, piteous eyes, and suddenly remembered that I had never seen her cry. When she told us sad tales in a voice laden with all the tears that had ever been shed, she had never shed one of her own. "I can't cry," she said drearily. "I wish I could. I've a dreadful feeling here." She touched her slender throat. "And if I could cry, I think it would make it better. But I can't." "Maybe Peter will get better after all," said Dan, swallowing a sob. I've heard of lots of people who went and got better after the doctor said they were going to die." "While there's life, there's hope, you know," said Felix. "We shouldn't cross bridges till we come to them." "Those are only proverbs," said the Story Girl bitterly. "Proverbs are all very fine when there's nothing to worry you, but when you're in real trouble, they're not a bit of help." "Oh, I wish I'd never said Peter wasn't fit to associate with," moaned Felicity. "If he ever gets better, I'll never say such a thing again. I'll never even think it. He's just a lovely boy, and twice as smart as lots that aren't hired out." "He was always so polite and good-natured and obliging," sighed Cecily. "He was just a real gentleman," said the Story Girl. "There ain't many fellows as fair and square as Peter," said Dan. "And such a worker," said Felix. "Uncle Roger says he never had a boy he could depend on like Peter," I said. "It's too late to be saying all these nice things about him now," said the Story Girl. "He won't ever know how much we thought of him. It's too late." "If he gets better, I'll tell him myself," said Cecily resolutely. "I wish I hadn't boxed his ears that day he tried to kiss me," went on Felicity, who was evidently raking her conscience for past offenses in regard to Peter. Of course I couldn't be expected to let a boy kiss me. But I needn't have been so cross about it. I might have been more dignified. And I told him I just hated him. That wasn't true. But I suppose he'll die thinking it is. Oh, dear me. What makes people say things they've got to be sorry for afterwards? I suppose if Peter dies, he'll go to heaven anyhow, sobbed Cecily. He's been real good all this summer, but he isn't a church member. He's a Presbyterian, you know, said Felicity reassuringly. Her tone expressed her conviction that that would carry Peter through if anything would. We're none of us church members. But of course Peter couldn't be sent to the bad place. That would be ridiculous. What would they do with him there, when he's so good and polite and honest and kind? Oh, I think he'll be all right, too, sighed Cecily. But you know he never did go to church and Sunday school before this summer. Well, his father ran away, and his mother was too busy earning a living to bring him up right, argued Felicity. Don't you suppose that anybody, even God, would make allowances for that? Of course Peter will go to heaven, said the Story Girl. He's not grown up enough to go anywhere else. Children always go to heaven. But I don't want him to go there or anywhere else. I want him to stay right here. I know heaven must be a splendid place, but I'm sure Peter would rather stay here, having fun with us. Sarah Stanley, rebuked Felicity, I should think you wouldn't say such things at such a solemn time. You're such a strange girl. Wouldn't you rather be here yourself than in heaven? Said the Story Girl bluntly. Wouldn't you now, Felicity King? Tell the truth, cross your heart. But Felicity took refuge from this inconvenient question in tears. If we could only do something to help Peter, I said desperately. It seems dreadful to not be able to do a single thing. There's one thing we can do, said Cecily gently. We can pray for him. So we can, I agreed. I'm going to pray like 60, said Felix energetically. We'll have to be awfully good, you know, warned Cecily. There's no use praying if you're not good. That'll be easy, sighed Felicity. I don't feel a bit like being bad. If anything happens to Peter, I feel sure I'll never be naughty again. I won't have the heart. We did indeed pray most sincerely for Peter's recovery. We did not, as in the case of Patty, tack it on after more important things, but put it in the very forefront of our petitions. Even skeptical Dan prayed, his skepticism falling away from him like a discarded garment in this valley of the shadow, which sifts out hearts and tries souls, until we all, grown up or children, realize our weakness, and finding that our own puny strength is as a reed shaken in the wind, creep back humbly to the God we have vainly dreamed we could do without. Peter was no better the next day. Aunt Olivia reported that his mother was broken-hearted. We did not again ask to be released from work. Instead, we went at it with feverish zeal. If we worked hard, there was less time for grief and grievous thoughts. We picked apples and dragged them to the granary doggedly. In the afternoon, Aunt Janet brought us a lunch of apple turnovers, but we could not eat them. Peter, as Felicity reminded us with a burst of tears, had been so fond of apple turnovers. And oh, how good we were! How angelically and unnaturally good! Never was there such a band of kind, sweet-tempered, unselfish children in any orchard. Even Felicity and Dan, for once in their lives, got through the day without any exchange of left-handed compliments. Cecily confided to me that she never meant to put up her hair in curlers on Saturday nights again, because it was pretending. She was so anxious to repent of something, sweet girl, and this was all she could think of. During the next afternoon, Judy Pineau brought up a tear-blotted note from Sarah Ray. Sarah had not been allowed to visit the hill farm since Peter had developed measles. She was an unhappy little exile, and could only relieve her anguish of soul by daily letters to Cecily, which the faithful and obliging Judy Pineau brought up for her. These epistles were as gushingly underlined as if Sarah had been a correspondent of early Victorian days. Cecily did not write back, because Mrs. Ray had decreed that no letters must be taken down from the hill farm, lest they carry infection. Cecily had offered to bake every epistle thoroughly in the oven before sending it, but Mrs. Ray was inexorable, and Cecily had to content herself by sending long verbal messages with Judy Pineau. "My own dearest Cecily," ran Sarah's letter, "I have just heard the sad news about poor dear Peter. I can't describe my feelings. They're dreadful. I've been crying all the afternoon. I wish I could fly to you, but Ma will not let me. She is afraid I will catch the measles, but I would rather have the measles 12 times over than be separated from you all like this. But I have felt ever since the Judgment Sunday that I must obey Ma better than I used to do. If anything happens to Peter, you're to let me see him before it happens. Give him my love and tell him how sorry I am, and that I hope we will all meet in a better world. Everything in school is about the same. The master is awful cross by spells. Jimmy Fruin walked home with Nellie Bowen last night from prayer meeting, and her only 14. Don't you think it horrid beginning so young? You and me would never do anything like that till we were grown up, would we? Willie Fraser looks so lonesome in school these days. I must stop, for Ma says I waste far too much time writing letters. Tell Judy all the news for me. Your own true friend, Sarah Ray. P.S. Oh, I do hope Peter will get better. Ma is going to get me a new brown dress for the winter. S.R. When evening came, we went to our seats under the whispering, sighing fir trees. It was a beautiful night, clear, windless, and frosty. Someone galloped down the road on horseback, lustily singing a comic song. How dared he? We felt that it was an insult to our wretchedness. If Peter were going to, if anything happened to Peter, we felt so miserably sure that the music of life would be stilled for us forever. How could anyone in the world be happy when we were so unhappy? Presently, Aunt Olivia came down the long twilight arcade. Her bright hair was uncovered, and she looked slim and queen-like in her light dress. We thought Aunt Olivia very pretty then. Looking back from a mature standpoint, I realized that she must have been an unusually beautiful woman, and she looked her prettiest as she stood under the swaying boughs in the last faint light of the autumn dusk, and smiled down at our woebegone faces. "Dear, sorrowful little people, I bring you glad tidings of great joy," she said. "The doctor has just been here, and he finds Peter much better, and thinks he will pull through after all." We gazed up at her in silence for a few moments. When we had heard the news of Patty's recovery, we had been noisy and jubilant, but we were very quiet now. We had been too near something dark and terrible and menacing, and though it was thus suddenly removed, the chill and shadow of it were about us still. Presently the Story Girl, who had been standing up, leaning against a tall fir, slipped down to the ground in a huddled fashion, and broke into a very passion of weeping. I had never heard anyone cry so, with dreadful, rending sobs. I was used to hearing girls cry. It was as much Sarah Ray's normal state as any other, and even Felicity and Cecily availed themselves occasionally of the privilege of sex. But I had never heard any girl cry like this. It gave me the same unpleasant sensation which I had felt one time when I had seen my father cry. "Oh, don't, Sarah, don't," I said gently, patting her convulsed shoulder. "You are a strange girl," said Felicity, more tolerantly than usual, however. You never cried a speck when you thought Peter was going to die. And now when he's going to get better, you cry like that." "Sarah, child, come with me," said Aunt Olivia, bending over her. The Story Girl got up and went away, with Aunt Olivia's arms around her. The sound of her crying died away under the firs, and with it seemed to go the dread and grief that had been our portion for hours. In the reaction, our spirits rose with a bound. "Oh, ain't it great that Peter's going to be all right," said Dan, springing up. "I was never so glad of anything in my whole life," declared Felicity in shameless rapture. "Can't we send word somehow to Sarah Ray tonight?" asked Cecily, the ever-thoughtful. "She's feeling so bad, and she'll have to feel that way till tomorrow if we can't. Let's all go down to the Ray gate and holler to Judy Pineau till she comes out," suggested Felix. Accordingly, we went and hollered with a right good will. We were much taken aback to find that Mrs. Ray came to the gate instead of Judy, and rather sourly demanded what we were yelling about. When she heard our news, however, she had the decency to say she was glad, and to promise she would convey the good tidings to Sarah, who was already in bed, where all children of her age should be, added Mrs. Ray severely. We had no intention of going to bed for a good 2 hours yet. Instead, after devoutly thanking goodness that our grown-ups, in spite of some imperfections, were not of the Mrs. Ray type, we betook ourselves to the granary, lighted a huge lantern, which Dan had made out of a turnip, and proceeded to devour all the apples we might have eaten throughout the day but had not. We were a blithe little crew, sitting there in the light of our goblin lantern. We had, in very truth, been given beauty for ashes, and the oil of joy for mourning. Life was as a red rose once more. "I'm going to make a big batch of patty pans first thing in the morning," said Felicity jubilantly. "Isn't it odd? Last night I felt just like praying, and tonight I feel just like cooking." "We mustn't forget to thank God for making Peter better," said Cecily, as we finally went to the house. "Do you suppose Peter wouldn't have got better anyway?" said Dan. "Oh, Dan, what makes you ask such questions?" exclaimed Cecily in real distress. "I don't know," said Dan. "They just kind of come into my head like. But of course, I mean to thank God when I say my prayers tonight. That's only decent." Chapter 30. A Compound Letter. Once Peter was out of danger, he recovered rapidly. But he found his convalescence rather tedious, and Aunt Olivia suggested to us one day that we write a compound letter to amuse him, until he could come to the window and talk to us from a safe distance. The idea appealed to us, and the day being Saturday, and the apples all picked, we betook ourselves to the orchard to compose our epistles, Cecily having sent word by a convenient caller to Sarah Ray that she too might have a letter ready. Later, I, having at that time a mania for preserving all documents relating to our life in Carlisle, copied those letters in the blank pages at the back of my dream book. Hence I can reproduce them verbatim, with the bouquet they have retained through all the long years since they were penned in that autumnal orchard on the hill, with its fading leaves and frosted grasses, and the mild, delightsome melancholy of the late October day enfolding. Cecily's letter. "Dear Peter, I'm so very glad and thankful that you are going to get better. We were so afraid you would not last Tuesday, and we felt dreadful, even Felicity. We all prayed for you. I think the others have stopped now, but I keep it up every night still, for fear you might have a relapse. I'm saving some of the Honorable Mr. Whalen's pears for you. I've got them hid where nobody can find them. There's only a dozen, because Dan ate all the rest, but I guess you'll like them. We've got all the apples picked, and are all ready to take the measles now if we have to, but I hope we won't. If we have to, though, I'd rather catch them from you than from anyone else, because we're acquainted with you. If I do take the measles, and anything happens to me, Felicity is to have my cherry vase. I'd rather give it to the Story Girl, but Dan says it ought to be kept in the family, even if Felicity is a crank. I haven't anything else valuable since I gave Sarah Ray my forget-me-not jug. But if you would like anything I've got, let me know, and I'll leave instructions for you to have it. The Story Girl has told us some splendid stories lately. I wish I was clever like her. Ma says it doesn't matter if you're not clever as long as you're good. But I'm not even very good. I think this is all my news, except I want to tell you how much we all think of you, Peter. When we heard you were sick, we all said nice things about you. But we were afraid it was too late, and I said if you got better, I'd tell you. It's easier to write it than to tell it out to your face. We think you are smart and polite and obliging, and a great worker and a gentleman. Your true friend, Cecily King. P.S. If you answer my letter, don't say anything about the pears because I don't want Dan to find out there's any left. Felicity's letter. Dear Peter, Aunt Olivia says for us all to write a compound letter to cheer you up. We're all awful glad you're getting better. It gave us an awful scare when we heard you were going to die, but you will soon be all right and able to get out again. Be careful you don't catch cold. I'm going to bake some nice things for you and send them over, now that the doctor says you can eat them. And I'll send you my rosebud plate to eat off of. I'm only lending it, not giving it. I let very few people use it because it's my greatest treasure. Mind you don't break it. Aunt Olivia must always wash it, not your mother. I do hope the rest of us won't catch the measles. It must look horrid to have red spots all over your face. We all feel pretty well yet. The Story Girl says as many strange things as ever. Felix thinks he's getting thin, but he's fatter than ever, and no wonder, with all the apples he eats. He has given up trying to eat the bitter apples at last. Beverly has grown half an inch since July by the mark on the hall door, and he's awful pleased about it. I told him I guessed the magic seed was taking effect at last, and he got mad. He never gets mad at anything the Story Girl says, and yet she's so sarcastic by times. Dan is pretty hard to get along with as usual, but I tried to bear patiently with him. Cecily is well and says she isn't going to curl her hair any more. She is so conscientious. I'm glad my hair curls of itself, ain't you? We haven't seen Sarah Ray since you got sick. She's awful lonesome, and Judy says she cries nearly all the time, but that's nothing new. I'm awful sorry for Sarah, but I'm glad I'm not her. She's going to write a letter to you, too. You'll let me see what she puts in it, won't you? You'd better take some Mexican tea now. It's a great blood purifier. I'm going to get a lovely dark blue dress for the winter. It's ever so much prettier than Sarah Ray's brown one. Sarah Ray's mother has no taste. The Story Girl's father is sending her a new red dress and a red velvet cap from Paris. She's so fond of red. I can't bear it. It looks so common. Mother says I can get a velvet hood, too. Cecily says she doesn't believe it's right to wear velvet when it's so expensive, and the heathen are crying for the gospel. She got that idea from a Sunday school paper, but I'm going to get my hood all the same. Well, Peter, I have no more news, so I will close for this time. Hoping you will soon be quite well, I remain yours sincerely, Felicity King. P.S. The Story Girl peeked over my shoulder and says I ought to have signed it yours affectionately, but I know better, because the Family Guide has told lots of times how you should sign yourself when you're writing to a young man who is only a friend. Felix's letter. Dear Peter, I'm awful glad you're getting better. We all felt bad when we thought you wouldn't, but I felt worse than the others because we hadn't been on very good terms lately, and I'd said mean things about you. I'm sorry. And Peter, you can pray for anything you like, and I won't ever object again. I'm glad Uncle Alec interfered and stopped the fight. If I'd have licked you and you'd have died of the measles, it would have been a dreadful thing. We have all the apples in and haven't much to do just now, and we're having lots of fun, but we wish you were here to join in. I'm a lot thinner than I was. I guess working so hard picking apples is a good thing to make you thin. The girls are all well. Felicity puts on as many airs as ever, but she makes great things to eat. I've had some splendid dreams since we gave up writing them down. That's always the way. We ain't going to school till we're sure we're not going to have the measles. This is all I can think of, so I'll draw to a close. Remember, you can pray for anything you like. Felix King. Sarah Ray's letter. Dear Peter, I never wrote to a boy before, so please excuse all mistakes. I'm so glad you're getting better. We were so afraid you were going to die. I cried all night about it. But now that you're out of danger, will you tell me what it really feels like to think you're going to die? Does it feel strange? Were you very badly frightened? Ma won't let me go up the hill at all now. I would die if it wasn't for Judy Pineau. Judy is very obliging, and I feel she sympathizes with me. In my lonely hours, I read my dream book and Cecily's old letters, and they're such a comfort to me. I've been reading one of the school library books, too. One is pretty good, but I wish they had got more love stories, because they're so exciting, but the master would not let them. If you had died, Peter, and your father had heard it, wouldn't he have felt dreadful? We're all having beautiful weather, and the scenery is fine since the leaves turned. I think there's nothing so pretty as nature after all. I hope all danger from the measles will soon be over, and we can all meet again at the home on the hill. Till then, farewell. Your true friend, Sarah Ray. P.S. Don't let Felicity see this letter. Dan's letter. Dear old Pete, awful glad you cheated the doctor. I thought you weren't the kind to turn up your toes so easy. You should have heard the girls crying. They're all getting their winter finery now, and the talk about it would make you sick. The Story Girl is getting hers from Paris, and Felicity's awful jealous, though she pretends she isn't. I can see through her. Kitmar was up here Thursday to see the girls. She's had the measles, so she isn't scared. She is a great girl to laugh. I like a girl that laughs, don't you? We had a call from Peg Bowen yesterday. You should have seen the Story Girl hustling Pat out of the way. For all she says, she don't believe he was bewitched. Peg had your rheumatism ring on, and the Story Girl's blue beads, and Sarah Ray's lace sewed across the front of her dress. She wanted some tobacco and some pickles. Ma gave her some pickles, but said we didn't have no tobacco, and Peg went off mad. But I guess she wouldn't bewitch anything on account of the pickles. I ain't any hand to write letters, so I guess I'll stop. Hope you'll be out soon, Dan. The Story Girl's letter. Dear Peter, oh, how glad I am that you're getting better. Those days when you thought you wouldn't were the hardest of my whole life. It seemed too dreadful to be true that perhaps you would die. And then, when we heard you were going to get better, that seemed too good to be true. Oh, Peter, hurry up and get well, for we are having such good times and we miss you so much. I've coaxed Uncle Alec not to burn his potato stalks till you are well, because I remember how you always liked to see the potato stalks burn. Uncle Alec consented, though Aunt Janet said it was high time they were burned. Uncle Roger burned his last night, and it was such fun. Pat is splendid. He has never had a sick spell since that bad one. I would send him over to be company for you, but Aunt Janet says no, because he might carry the measles back with him. I don't see how he could, but we must obey Aunt Janet. She's very good to us all, but I know she does not approve of me. She says I'm my father's own child. I know that doesn't mean anything complimentary, because she looked so strange when she saw I had heard her, but I don't care. I'm glad I'm like Father. I had a splendid letter from him this week, with the darlingest pictures in it. He's painting a new picture, which is going to make him famous. I wonder what Aunt Janet will say then. Do you know, Peter, yesterday I thought I saw the family ghost at last. I was coming through the gap in the hedge, and I saw somebody in blue standing under Uncle Alex's tree. How my heart beat! My hair should have stood up on end with terror, but it didn't. I felt to see, and it was all lying down quite flat. But it was only a visitor after all. I don't know whether I was glad or disappointed. I don't think it would be a very pleasant experience to see the ghost, but after I had seen it, what a heroine I would be. Oh, Peter, what do you think? I've got acquainted with the awkward man at last. I never thought it would be so easy. Yesterday, Aunt Olivia wanted some ferns, so I went back to the maple woods to get them for her, and I found some lovely ones by the spring, and while I was sitting there, looking down into the spring, who should come along but the awkward man himself. He sat right down beside me and began to talk. I never was so surprised in my life. We had a very interesting talk, and I told him 2 of my best stories, and a great many of my secrets into the bargain. They may say what they like, but he was not one bit shy or awkward, and he has beautiful eyes. He did not tell me any of his secrets, but I believe he will some day. Of course, I never said a word about his Alice room, but I gave him a hint about his little brown book. I said I loved poetry, and often felt like writing it. And then I said, "Do you ever feel like that, Mr. Dale?" He said yes, he might sometimes have felt that way, but he did not mention the brown book. I thought he might have. But after all, I don't like people who tell you everything the first time you meet them, like Sarah Ray. When he went away, he said, "I hope I shall have the pleasure of meeting you again," just as seriously and politely as if I was a grown-up young lady. I'm sure he never could have said it if I had been really grown up. I told him it was likely he would, and that he wasn't to mind if I had a longer skirt on next time, because I'd be just the same person. I told the children a beautiful new fairy story today. I made them go to the spruce wood to hear it. A spruce wood is the proper place to tell fairy stories in. Felicity says she can't see that it makes any difference where you tell them, but oh, it does. I wish you had been there to hear it too, but when you are well, I will tell it over for you. Oh, Peter, shadows are such pretty things. The orchard is full of them this very minute. Sometimes they're so still you would think them asleep. Then, they go laughing and skipping. Outside in the oat field, they're always chasing each other. They're the wild shadows. The shadows in the orchard are the tame shadows. Everything seems to be rather tired growing except the spruces and chrysanthemums in Aunt Olivia's garden. The sunshine is so thick and yellow and lazy, and the crickets sing all day long. The birds are nearly all gone, and most of the maple leaves have fallen. Just to make you laugh, I'll write you a little story I heard Uncle Alec telling last night. It was about Elder Fruin's grandfather taking a pair of rope reins to lead a piano home. Everybody laughed except Aunt Janet. Old Mr. Fruin was her grandfather too, and she wouldn't laugh. One day, when old Mr. Fruin was a young man of 18, his father came home and said, "Sandy, I bought a piano at Simon Ward's sale today. You're to go tomorrow and bring it home." So the next day, Sandy started off on horseback with a pair of rope reins to lead the piano home. He thought it was some kind of livestock. And then Uncle Roger told about old Mark Ward, who got up to make a speech at a church missionary social when he was drunk. Of course, he didn't get drunk at the social. He went there that way, and this was his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, I can't express my thoughts on this grand subject of missions. It's in this poor human critter," patting himself on the breast, "but he can't get it out. I'll tell you these stories when you get well. I can tell them ever so much better than I can write them. I know Felicity is wondering why I'm writing such a long letter, so perhaps I'd better stop. If your mother reads it to you, there's a good deal of it she may not understand, but I think your Aunt Jane would. I remain your very affectionate friend, Sarah Stanley. I did not keep a copy of my own letter, and I've forgotten everything that was in it, except the first sentence, in which I told Peter I was awful glad he was getting better. Peter's delight on receiving our letter knew no bounds. He insisted on answering them, and his letter, painstakingly disinfected, was duly delivered to us. Aunt Olivia had written it at his dictation, which was a gain as far as spelling and punctuation went. But Peter's individuality seemed merged and lost in Aunt Olivia's big dashing script. Not until the story girl read the letter to us in the granary by jack-o'-lantern light, in a mimicry of Peter's very voice, did we savor the real bouquet of it. Peter's letter. Dear everybody, but especially Felicity, I was awful glad to get your letters. It makes you real important to be sick, but the time seems awful long when you're getting better. Your letters were all great, but I liked Felicity's best, and next to hers the story girl's. Felicity, it will be awful good of you to send me things to eat and the rosebud plate. I'll be awful careful of it. I hope you won't catch the measles, for they are not nice, especially when they strike in. But you would look all right, even if you did have red spots on your face. I would like to try the Mexican tea because you want me to, but Mother says no, she doesn't believe in it. And Burton's bitters are a great deal healthier. If I was you, I would get the velvet hood all right. The heathen live in warm countries, so they don't want hoods. I'm glad you're still praying for me, Cecily, for you can't trust the measles. And I'm glad you're keeping you-know-what for me. I don't believe anything will happen to you if you do take the measles, but if anything does, I'd like that little red book of yours, The Safe Compass, just to remember you by. It's such a good book to read on Sundays. It's interesting and religious, too. So's the Bible. I hadn't quite finished the Bible before I took the measles, but Ma is reading the last chapters to me. There's an awful lot in that book. I can't understand the whole of it since I'm only a hired boy, but some parts are real easy. I'm awful glad you have such a good opinion of me. I don't deserve it, but after this I'll try to. I can't tell you how I feel about all your kindness. I'm like the fellow the story girl wrote about who couldn't get it all out. I have the picture the story girl gave me for my sermon on the wall at the foot of my bed. I like to look at it. It looks so much like Aunt Jane. Felix, I've given up praying that I'd be the only one to eat the bitter apples, and I'll never pray for anything like that again. It was a horrid mean prayer. I didn't know it then, but after the measles struck in, I found out it was. Aunt Jane wouldn't have liked it. After this, I'm going to pray prayers I needn't be ashamed of. Sarah Ray, I don't know what it feels like to be going to die because I didn't know I was going to die till I got better. Mother says I was loony most of the time after they struck in. It was just because they struck in I was loony. I ain't loony naturally, Felicity. I will do what you asked in your postscript, Sarah, although that will be hard. I'm glad Peg Bowen didn't catch you, Dan. Maybe she bewitched me that night we were at her place, and that's why the measles struck in. I'm awful glad Mr. King is going to leave the potato stalks till I get well, and I'm obliged to the story girl for coaxing him. I guess she'll find out about Alice yet. There are some parts of her letter I couldn't see through, but when the measles strike in, they leave you stupid for a spell. Anyhow, it was a fine letter, and they were all fine, and I'm awful glad I have so many nice friends, even if I am only a hired boy. Perhaps I'd never found out if the measles hadn't struck in, so I'm glad they did, but I hope they never will again. Your obedient servant, Peter Craig. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Stories Come to Life. Be sure to join us next time when we continue to listen to The Story Girl by L.M. Montgomery. I'd love to hear from you, so please email me at kluker@marshallpl.org. I'll talk to you again soon.